Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of Vintage NASCAR Owners, Mike Disprospero and Bill Gardner. This team was founded by Disprospero and Gardner in 1973, when Mike added the first two letters of his last name and Bill added the first four letters of his last name to form a NASCAR Cup Series team named DiGard Racing. Several notable drivers spent time behind the wheel of one of the team's race cars, including Donnie Allison, Bobby Allison, Darrell Waltrip, Ricky Rudd, Greg Sacks, and Dick Trickle, among others. Their first driver was Donnie Allison, behind the wheel of a number 59 Chevrolet. Mario Rossi served as the team's crew chief. They DNQ'd at Daytona, but indeed did qualify their next three attempts, with the best finish coming at North Wilkesboro in the spring of 9th. Starting at Martinsville in the spring, the team changed their number to the number 88 for all but one of their remaining starts. The only race they would use a different number was the spring Talladega race, where they would use the number 08 and finished a season-high second. In the remaining 9 starts the team would make, their best start was second at Martinsville, and their best finish was third in Atlanta in the summer. Overall, in 14 starts, they scored 2 top 5s and 5 top 10s, though the team did DNF 10 out of 14 starts. For the 1974 NASCAR Cup Series season, DiGard Racing would bring back Donnie Allison to run about 2/3 of the schedule. In 21 starts, their best start was first twice, at Bristol and Darlington in the spring. Allison's best finish was second at Nashville in the spring. 1974 was a bit of an improvement over the season prior. Overall, in 21 starts, they scored 2 poles, 0 wins, 6 top 5s, and 10 top 10s. Now, indeed, Donnie Allison did return to drive the number 88 DiGard Racing Chevrolet in 1975. Mario Rossi remained the team's crew chief. Again, they were only running select races, though by race 16 at Daytona in the summer, Gardner fired Allison on the spot and told his brother Jim to do whatever it took to get that kid who just beat us to drive our team's race cars. That kid ended up being Darrell Waltrip. Now, Donnie did the team a solid job behind the wheel of the race cars. In 10 starts, Allison's best start was first twice at both Daytona races. His best finish was third at Darlington in the spring. Overall, in those 10 starts, he scored 2 poles, 0 wins, 2 top 5s, and 4 top 10s. 2 races later at Talladega, Darrell Waltrip made his debut for the team, though the team would use some of Darrell Waltrip's race cars from the team he owned and was racing for prior to joining DiGard. Waltrip's best finish was first at Richmond in the fall. This was the team's first victory. Overall, in 11 starts, Waltrip scored 1 win, 3 top 5s, and 4 top 10s. Johnny Rutherford also made 1 start at Daytona in the spring, finishing 27th in a number 08 Chevrolet. In 1976, DiGard Racing was able to land Gatorade as the team's primary sponsor. Darrell Waltrip returned to the number 88 Gatorade Chevrolet full-time. Throughout the season, they had some real strong runs, though the team was plagued by DNFs. Longtime crew chief Mario Rossi and the team's engine tuners, Carroll Davis and Keith Harlan, were fired in August. Marion Ducky Newman and Robert Yates were hired. Waltrip's best start was first 3 times, at Bristol in the summer, then Martinsville and North Wilkesboro in the fall. His best finish was first at Martinsville in the spring. Overall, scoring 3 poles, 1 win, 10 top 5s, and 12 top 10s, finishing 8th in final Cup Series point standings. Prior to the start of the 1977 NASCAR Cup Series season, DiGard Racing moved their race shop from Daytona Beach, Florida, to a new Charlotte, North Carolina race shop. Waltrip returned to the number 88 Gatorade Chevrolet full-time. David Iff began the season as the team's crew chief, though starting at race 11 in Nashville, Buddy Parrott took over as the team's crew chief. With the team so much closer to the center hub of the sport of NASCAR in Charlotte, DiGard flourished in 1977. Waltrip's best start was first 3 times, at Nashville in the spring, Pocono in the summer, and Darlington in the fall. His best finish was first 6 times, at Darlington and Talladega in the spring, Nashville and Michigan in the summer, and North Wilkesboro and Atlanta in the fall. Statistics were up all the way across the board, with Waltrip overall scoring 3 poles, 6 wins, 16 top 5s, and 24 top 10s, finishing 4th in final Cup Series point standings. The 1978 NASCAR Cup Series season saw Darrell Waltrip return to the number 88 Gatorade Chevrolet full-time for DiGard Racing. After a very strong 1977, they were again very strong in 78. Waltrip's best start was first twice, at Richmond and North Wilkesboro in the fall, and his best finish was first 6 times, at Bristol, North Wilkesboro, Martinsville, and Charlotte in the spring. Pocono in the summer, then Richmond in the fall. Overall, they scored 2 poles, 6 wins, 19 top 5s, and 20 top 10s, finishing third in final Cup Series point standings. Even with all the on-track success, Waltrip grew tired of all the behind-the-scenes drama with team ownership and even publicly stated that he would be joining Tenure Racing, though team owner Bill Gardner refused to let Waltrip out of his contract. The two met to work through some of their issues, where to the surprise of many, Waltrip remained with the team. With their issues apparently behind them, DiGard Racing and Darrell Waltrip went into the 1979 NASCAR Cup Series season. In 1979, Waltrip and the team did nearly everything correct, winning races, leading laps, and sometimes leading the most laps, therefore collecting valuable bonus points throughout the season. Waltrip's best start was first 5 times, at both Martinsville races, Talladega and Dover in the spring, then Nashville in the summer. His best finish was first 7 times, at Riverside, Darlington, Charlotte, and Texas World Speedway in the spring, and then Nashville, Talladega, and Bristol in the summer. DiGard Racing led the Cup Series point standings for 26 weeks, only to narrowly lose the series championship to Richard Petty by just 11 points, leading by a significant margin until the final few races of the season. Overall, Waltrip scored 5 poles, 7 wins, 19 top 5s, and 21 top 10s, finishing second in final Cup Series point standings. The loss angered Darrell Waltrip so much that he tried to sign a contract with Penske Enterprises, but when Penske learned of Waltrip's contract situation with DiGard Racing, the offer to race for the team was rescinded. It was a brand new decade, the 1980s, and in 1980, the situation between driver and team continued to get worse. After being fired at the conclusion of the 1979 season, Buddy Parrott was rehired before the start of the 1980 season. Waltrip returned for what ended up being his final season with the team. The year began pretty strong, though by June, Gardner had already fired Buddy Parrott again, replacing him with Jake Elder. Waltrip's best start was first 5 times, at Riverside, Richmond, Rockingham, and Martinsville in the spring, then Darlington in the fall. His best finish was first 5 times, at both Riverside races, Richmond and Martinsville in the spring, then Dover in the fall. Waltrip's hopes for another shot at the Cup Series championship disappeared a little more with every DNF that came, a total that ended up being 12 DNFs in 30 races. Another odd thing that I noticed is that in '79, DiGard Racing entered a car in every single race except the one at Pocono. Waltrip ran a number 22 Gatorade Chevrolet owned by Al Rudd. After Waltrip wrecked his team's race car in a post-qualifying practice session, which forced the team to withdraw from the event. Since Waltrip was in such a tight points battle with Richard Petty, he absolutely could not miss the race. Therefore, DiGard Racing worked out a deal to rent Al Rudd's number 22 Chevrolet, which had qualified 18th, with Rudd's son Al Jr. behind the wheel. DiGard's crew replaced about everything except the paint and the number. Waltrip started 18th, led some laps, and finished 7th in that race. Then in 1980, they did the same thing except they didn't go to the second Michigan race. Waltrip ran a number 02 owned by Joe Halpern. So I'm willing to bet that Waltrip was probably frustrated with this as well as the other issues behind the scenes. It got so bad by the fall of 1980 that in the press Waltrip was comparing himself to the Iranian hostages, stating that Gardner and the team was holding his progress in the sport back, also proclaiming that he will never win a NASCAR championship as long as he drove for the team. DiGard Racing responded to Waltrip's claims by saying he purposely overdrove their engines, causing them to fail, even saying that if his performance did not improve, then they would relegate Waltrip to the team's R&D car and replace him with Don Whittington. Overall, Waltrip scored 5 poles, 5 wins, 15 top 5s, and 16 top 10s, finishing 5th in final Cup Series point standings. Don Whittington made one start in a number 55 Chevrolet at Riverside in the spring, finishing 9th. After Waltrip's lawyer figured out how much it would cost to buy out Waltrip of his contract, Waltrip did just that and promptly left the team at the conclusion of the season. After several years with the same driver, in 1981, DiGard Racing had a brand new driver. Ricky Rudd became the driver of the DiGard Racing's number 88 Gatorade Chevrolet, Oldsmobiles, and Buicks. Jake Elder began the season as the team's crew chief until race 4, when Gary Nelson took over. The changes didn't seem to hurt the team's performance too badly. Rudd's best start was first 3 times, at Martinsville and Nashville in the spring, then Dover in the fall. His best finish was second 3 times, at both Bristol races and Richmond in the spring, spending all but 5 weeks in the top 5 in point standings. Overall, scoring 3 poles, 0 wins, 14 top 5s, and 17 top 10s, finishing 6th in final Cup Series point standings. At the conclusion of the season, Rudd and DiGard parted ways. The following season, in 1982, the team got a new driver, Bobby Allison, to pilot their number 88 Gatorade Chevrolets, Pontiacs, and Buicks. This was a very strong season for DiGard Racing, never falling out of the top 5 in points, even leading the points for 10 weeks throughout the season. Allison's best start was first at Richmond in the fall, and his best finish was first 8 times at both Daytona and Pocono races, Dover in the spring, Michigan in the summer, then Richmond and Atlanta in the fall. Overall scoring 1 pole, 8 wins, 14 top 5s, and 20 top 10s, finishing second in final Cup Series point standings. The 1983 NASCAR Cup Series season saw Bobby Allison return to DiGard Racing, though the team made some changes in the offseason. The team changed their number to 22, and their new primary sponsor was Miller High Life. The team began the season running Chevrolets, but after race 3, they switched back to Buick, because Junior Johnson's team was given primary access to Monte Carlo's nose pieces. Nonetheless, they had a very strong season. Allison's best start was third at Rockingham in the spring, and his best finish was first 6 times at both Richmond and Dover races, Pocono in the summer, and Darlington in the fall. Allison led the Cup Series point standings 22 weeks throughout the season, on his way to his first and the team's first and only Cup Series championship. Overall scoring 0 poles, 6 wins, 18 top 5s, and 25 top 10s, winning the 1983 NASCAR Cup Series championship. Jimmy Insolo made 1 start at Riverside in the fall in a number 12 Buick, finishing 42nd. Even winning the Series championship in 1983, in 1984 the team's finances continued to deteriorate. Allison, of course, did return to the number 22 Miller High Life Buick, though they were a lot more inconsistent. The team was supplying engines to Richard Petty's Curb Racing. Both the teams had issues over who had the best engines and the payment arrangement between the two teams. The deal was over following the 1984 summer race at Daytona. Allison's best start was 4th at Daytona in the spring, and his best finish was first twice at Rockingham and Charlotte in the spring. Overall, they scored 0 poles, 2 wins, 13 top 5s, and 18 top 10s, finishing 6th in final Cup Series point standings. For the 1985 NASCAR Cup Series season, DiGard Racing saw Bobby Allison return to the team's number 22 Miller American Buick. Robert Pemberton served as the team's crew chief for the 1985 season. Allison and the team ran the first 15 starts of the 85 season, slowly starting to get their season on track, when DiGard entered a second car, an R&D car, a number 10 Buick with Greg Sacks behind the wheel at the Daytona summer race. This entry led to an unexpected victory for both Sacks and the team, though this would end up being the team's final Cup Series victory. Allison was angered at the fact that the team wasn't focused on his race cars and immediately left the team, taking the Miller sponsorship with him following the end of the season. In 15 starts, Allison's best start was 2nd at Bristol in the spring, and his best finish was 3rd 3 times at North Wilkesboro, Charlotte, and Riverside in the spring. Overall, in 15 starts, he scored 6 top 5s and 9 top 10s. After Greg Sacks won the Firecracker 400 at Daytona in the summer, and Allison left the team, Sacks became the new primary driver of DiGard Racing's number 77 Miller American Buick. Sacks' best start was 4th at Rockingham in the fall, and his best finish was 1st at Daytona in the summer. Overall, in 14 starts, he scored 1 win, 1 top 5, and 3 top 10s. Dick Trickle also made 1 start in a number 10 Buick at Michigan in the summer, finishing 8th. Ken Reagan also made 1 start in a number 10 Buick at Charlotte in the fall, finishing 28th. The downward spiral continued for DiGard Racing in 1986. Greg Sacks returned to the team, making the first 4 starts of the season behind the wheel of a number 10 TRW Pontiac and Chevrolets. Sacks' best start was 4th at Atlanta in the spring, and his best finish was 10th at Talladega in the spring. Overall, in 8 starts, he scored 1 top 10. Willie T. Ribbs made 6 attempts for DiGard Racing, 5 in a number 30 Chevrolet, qualifying for 3 races. The best finisher 22nd at North Wilkesboro in the spring. He also made 1 start in a number 64 Chevrolet at Riverside in the spring, where he finished 31st. Jeff Swindell also made 1 start in Atlanta in the fall for the team, starting 11th and finishing 31st. Trevor Boys made 1 start as well for the team at Rockingham in the fall, starting 28th and finishing 37th. After years of racing in the NASCAR Cup Series, in 1987, DiGard Racing made their final 3 starts that the team would make. Rodney Combs made the final 3 starts in the team's number 10 Oldsmobiles and Chevrolets. Combs' best start was 23rd at North Wilkesboro in the spring, and his best finish was 19th at Daytona in the spring. So after 377 NASCAR Cup Series starts, they scored 26 poles, 43 wins, 158 top 5s, and 211 top 10s, with the best points finish of first in 1983 by Bobby Allison. Thank you for watching. Take care.